Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Yolanda Melody. Today I want to talk about the law of assumption, the law of attraction, and manifestation. I want to explain it in a way that is from a grounded perspective, because what I've found recently is that it has become extremely gimmicky. It's become a subject that is that popular that some people have entire channels dedicated to this. And while I do think that it's amazing that this knowledge is being spread, sometimes it can be misunderstood, and then some people find that it either doesn't work or it actually ends up making them feel worse. And then they shun the idea of manifestation altogether. They start thinking that when people say you create your own reality, that it's just a gimmicky lie. And the reason why I say this is because I've been there. I was huge on the whole manifestation thing. And then when I felt like it wasn't working for me, I either simply gave up trying to create my own reality and to create positive things for myself. And I also started looking at content that was claiming that manifestation is in fact evil. And I will be doing a whole video on this because I personally think that a lot of Christians are being suppressed when they're told that manifestation is evil, because at the end of the day, we are all co-creating our own reality. Whether we are conscious of it or not, you could be unconsciously creating chaos for yourself, thinking, why are all these terrible things happening to me? And by doing that, it's only creating harm to yourself, as opposed to choosing to actively master the mind, which in turn will create positive outcomes in your reality. First things first, you might have heard terms like manifestation, the law of attraction, the law of assumption, the law of vibration. All of these things are explaining the same thing, but they tend to have a different rhetoric when people are speaking about it online, but they are all the same thing. Recently, I started stumbling across videos about the law of assumption, and I actually found that this was the most helpful way of describing how you should be feeling in order to manifest. Often when people describe the law of attraction, you can often end up in a trap of focusing heavily on your desires. And the way that it's often explained is you need to think about your desires and think about how great it would feel when you get that desire, and almost obsess over it, make vision boards, put it up on the wall, have it so that you're always seeing this thing that you want. The advice that people are giving out now has evolved since then, and the pitfall with this kind of speaking is that it often puts you in a feeling of lack. So say, for example, you want to be financially comfortable or very financially comfortable. Say, for example, you want a new job that's going to give you that stability. If you focus on that job so much and you're thinking about it all day long, it almost becomes an obsession. The more that you think about how much you want this job, it can actually distance you further from that goal. We're all very familiar with the feeling of wanting something so badly that we end up pushing it away. The objective is to attract, but desperation is the complete opposite of that. So this is why people talk about detachment a lot. So the example of the person who wants to get this job and get financially stable. Simply by having that desperate energy, the person can go into the job interview with that repellent, desperate energy, which could potentially put off the employer. People can feel that type of energy. They might not even be spiritually in tune, but throughout my life I've found this is the laws of how this world works. So this is how focusing on a desire can actually create the opposite effect of manifesting. It's a complete contradiction. Now, the way that people explain the law of assumption, which is the same thing just with a different catchphrase, is instead of thinking about what you desire, you assume that you already have it. And this is a very, very good way of looking at it, because something better happens in this process, and that is personal growth. It's actually a trick of the mind. And instead of putting your desire on a pedestal, what you are actually doing is realizing that that pedestal doesn't exist. It's like your desire is up here and you think that you're here, and by using the law of assumption, what you do is you go like that. The more that you think about this, the more that you will notice that this way of thinking and this method proves itself to be true over and over and over. You will often see that people who have wealth, for example, will use the example of someone who has been brought up in a wealthy family, like old money. People who are born into wealth kind of take it for granted often. They don't put wealth on a pedestal. They are born into a reality where it is normal to them. They assume that they are rich. They assume that people will treat them a certain way because typically they haven't been shown anything in their reality that is in opposition to this. So people who are born into wealth, typically, unless they're completely, unless they go off the rails, because this does happen, typically what we see is that they manage to obtain that wealth and keep it going. And of course there are many real life factors and societal factors that play into this, but we're talking about the spiritual element here, what's going on behind the scenes. So let's go into a different example whereby someone is new money, right? So the rags to riches kind of story. More and more recently, we're seeing people who are managing to, quote unquote, break out of the rat race. But let's use a really good example, someone who wins the lottery. A strange thing that can often happen with people that propel from poverty into wealth really quickly is they can go back into poverty and then back into extreme wealth. Comment down below if you know what I mean, because I've seen this so many times in real life and just various examples. One of the reasons why this happens is because a person who goes from rags to riches understands how it feels to be in both predicaments. Often people who propel into wealth have some kind of fear that they will eventually lose it or that something may happen. They also tend to put wealth on a pedestal above themselves because sometimes they worked incredibly hard to get there. They may have been brought up with beliefs such as money doesn't grow on trees, money is evil. That's a big one. They might also notice the very different attitudes between the classes. If you happen to come across a plethora of people who are wealthy and do not have a very nice personality, it can actually convince you that money makes people evil. And because most of us don't want to be a bad person, that subconscious belief that money makes people evil can actually make us repel money. I also just want to make a point here that I am using money a lot as examples because typically this is what a lot of people want, and there's just so many examples that I can give that are related to money. However, the reason why I am talking about the law of assumption is actually because I believe that collectively we can use this to change what is going on in the world, which is far more important and what I actually believe is the main thing that we should be focusing on changing. But anyway, I digress. The simplest way of explaining the law of assumption is that whatever you believe and assume to be true becomes true. And this is incredibly powerful. You can look at examples, now that you've learnt this information, you can look out at your day-to-day life and the people that you know. Everybody has some things that they attract it so easily. It's almost like it just falls into their lap. But then they tend to also have something that is their number one gripe, that they try so hard to attract this thing, but they just don't seem to manage to do it. I'll give you an example again. Loads of examples. I have seen so many women that desperately want a child. And I started to notice something really strange, that the women that I knew that really desperately wanted to conceive were trying absolutely everything. They seemed to have to work so much harder to get pregnant, and sometimes they'd go to the doctors and they'd get all of these tests done. Their partner would get tested to see if there was anything wrong. The doctor would come back and say, there's nothing wrong, just keep trying. Some people I've known to go as far to get IVF. Now the good news is that Eventually, most of them have actually ended up conceiving now, but I have been seeing this pattern go on for years, and I've thought it is so strange. On the contrary, the amount of girls that I know that never wanted to get pregnant, that almost tried to avoid it as much as possible, somehow ended up getting pregnant. And every time I just thought to myself, why is life so cruel? You've got all these women out there that really desperately want children, and they're trying so hard to conceive, and it's so difficult for them. And then you have other women that just, boom, pregnant, and they don't want it. Well, the mind and the body are intrinsically connected, obviously. So whatever your subconscious beliefs are, your body is receiving that messaging. And what you see in this example that I've just given is that the women who got pregnant assumed that they were fertile. They didn't want to get pregnant, therefore they didn't put pregnancy on a pedestal. They weren't looking at it as something difficult that is out of their reach that they need to try really hard to do. It just happened. Whereas the women that really wanted the pregnancy, because they wanted it so badly, it can create a resistance to that happening. Sometimes they may be assuming, because this is the thing, right? With TV and film, how often do you see this programming that people say we're trying for a baby? It's shown over and over again in films and series. This could well be an implanted subconscious belief that if you actually want a child, you have to try really hard, and it can be a really grueling process. It's extremely cruel, to be quite honest, that the media do this. And this is another thing that people need to bear in mind, that most people who talk about the law of attraction just completely blank this altogether, but the system is constantly trying to attack our subconscious mind with negative beliefs about everything. So if people are wondering, why is it so difficult for me to manifest or create my own reality? I want a positive life. A lot of the time we have to bear in mind that it would be a lot easier if there wasn't some kind of spiritual warfare and subconscious mindfuckery that is going on. But we also have to bear in mind that this knowledge is being used against us. That is a reality, and that we're not just the only person creating a reality. Every single human is contributing to what is going on collectively. As I've said in previous videos, the reason why I want to talk about this now is because I feel like we are moving into a whole new phase. Utilizing manifestation is not about putting yourself in a delusional state where you're ignoring problems that are real and avoiding anything that is possibly negative. If you fall into that trap, it's very short-lived, and often this is what puts people off the whole thing altogether, because it isn't sustainable. I hate that word. It gets you hyped up for a certain length of time, maybe a few weeks. You'll feel so hyped up, you'll watch all this content like, yeah, I'm going to manifest my dreams. You're watching videos, learning all these different techniques and stuff. It's not necessarily a bad thing if you're in a really bad state. It can lift you up, but I believe you get to that level and then you need to implement it in a very grounded way and a balanced way. A way that I've heard it explained before, and this is quite profound and can really help, is when you think about dimensions. You've heard people talk about 3D, 4D, 5D, and people saying, oh, we're moving into 5D. Yeah, well, I don't really vibe with that kind of like culty way of talking, but it's fun to listen to nonetheless. Like, I can jokingly talk about it. I don't think that in this reality we are ever moving to 5D unless you die and then ascend into a different dimension. But of course, I believe that there are different dimensions, but I believe that we only enter the different higher dimensions when we're asleep or when we're dead. I'm just going to say it how it is. Or If you are psychic and you can actually see things like ghosts, etc., then I suppose you are seeing a glimpse of something that is in a different dimension. I also believe that people who take psychedelics, what they are seeing is not just a weird amalgamation of things that are inside their brain. I actually believe that when they take psychedelics, they are seeing something that is definitely going on in another dimension in the room. And you know what, while I'm at it, psychosis, schizophrenia, same thing. I know it sounds like I'm going off topic, it is all connected, but I just had to say this. People who go into some form of psychosis where they are seeing things, I genuinely believe that they are seeing things that are actually in the room, but the majority of us have a protective layer where we're not exposed to that type of stuff because it can send you crazy. This is why I don't promote people taking psychedelics. If that door is meant to be opened, it will be opened by God. God will give you that gift and you will be able to see things that are meant for you to see, and you'll be at a level where you can accept that and not be completely freaked out. Anyway, that's a complete tangent about 5D dimensions. What I was saying about it in relation to this subject. I once heard that the 3D is like a dumpster of all of your previous thoughts. So everything that you're seeing right now is reflecting previous thoughts that you have had. It's like a delayed reaction. So when you think about it like that, it really puts it into perspective that your present circumstances, no matter how bad they are, the way to get out of it is you have to start to raise yourself out of it. First through the power of your thoughts. And really it's not necessarily about manifesting this one particular thing. What it is more so is the feeling that you will get once you get that thing. Why do most people want money? Some people want it for greed. Most people want it because they want to feel comfortable, safe, and at ease. And at peace. They simply want to feel at peace. They don't want to have to worry about money. They don't want to have to sacrifice their integrity to earn money. So an example of this would be, don't put a pile of money on a vision board and brainwash yourself with pictures of money and becoming money obsessed, because it's not necessarily money that you want. It's the feeling that you'll get from it. When you look at it like that, it means that your desires are not evil at all. It's not wrong to want money. It depends on what kind of place it's coming from. But with the law of assumption, you're not waiting for something to manifest in order to be happy. You're going to decide to be happy right now. You're going to alleviate the pressure of wanting something really badly. You're throwing that to the side, and instead you're thinking, forget my current circumstances and how scary or tough things might be at this moment. I'm going to elevate myself, I'm going to raise my frequency, and I'm going to embody peace, happiness, ease. And this is not coming from a delusional point of view, because again, if you have a positive outlook and you're in a higher vibration, you have a greater perspective to solve problems. If you put two people in a room, they're locked in, they've both got a puzzle in front of them, and they're told, you need to solve this puzzle before you can leave. If you don't solve this puzzle, you're trapped here. So you've got two people. One of them becomes consumed by the fear that they're not going to get out, that they're not going to solve the puzzle. The other person has got the exact same puzzle, and that person thinks, yep, I'm going to solve this puzzle and then I'm going to leave. Which one of them is going to solve the puzzle quicker? It is the person that is not allowing the negative emotions to cloud their vision, because that's what it does. Yes, of course, we are human, we experience emotions, and I fully believe that you shouldn't push them down or do toxic positivity. You should be able to release your emotions in a healthy manner so that you can then be tranquil. I think in my next video I'm going to talk about how we can actually apply this to the world situation that's going on and how we can collectively raise the vibe of the world, because right now everything is on a really, really low vibe. I am hearing so many people on YouTube, normies, by the way. Let me just say this, right? I've been seeing multiple videos from normal rego YouTubers that don't do truther content. They just talk about worldly stuff. I've seen them post random videos just out of the blue along the lines of nothing feels real since 2020 and what changed, what shifted after 2020. And it's it is a bit comical, really, like for us to hear people say that. It's like yeah, can you not put the pieces together? But without taking the piss. I found it to be so telling and so poignant that regular YouTubers are now even admitting, they're actually admitting that they can feel this collective vibe from people that everyone has just given up. Like, they don't even care anymore. People have become so downtrodden. They've developed learned helplessness where they literally have got to the point where they accept that everything is shit and there's no fixing it. Like, that's the general mindset. And you could be thinking, well, oh God, this sucks. But I actually think that this is progress, because if they start acknowledging it, you know, that actually, instead of pretending that everything's just gone back to normal, let's just do videos about baking and makeup tutorials and let's all just be happy. Instead of that, people are realising that there is something very wrong. And while a lot of people will be going through a dark night of the soul, thinking, what is it? What's going wrong? You know, the normies, at least they are acknowledging the problem, and then the next step is fixing it collectively. I was so shocked to read so many comments. I was just scrolling through just out of curiosity, and everyone is agreeing on the same thing, that something shifted after 2020. The world changed and it hasn't gone back, and everything feels incredibly dystopian. I know to us this is like screamingly obvious, but does it not say something that the normies are accepting it now? I just thought I'd put that in the end of this video. Anyway, thank you to everyone who donates to this channel. Thank you for liking, commenting, sharing and subscribing so that more people can see these videos. Love you, bye!